All right, everybody, welcome to this episode of Learning the Tropes. I'm Erin.
I'm Clayton.
I'm your romance novel veteran.
And I'm the virgin.
And we're your host.
There we go.
Hi.
Yes. Hi.
It's been a while. We came back because there's big romance happening, and we decided we needed to get together to chat about it.
Yes.
So welcome back, Clayton. We got the band back together.
I know. We had to get together for Colleen Hoover. It Ends With Us, a huge movie based on a huge book that we never read when we were doing this show regularly.
No, I've never read it. A few people I know have read it and have gave differing reviews, and so
Okay.
it never seemed like it was something to read for the podcast necessarily.
Okay.
But it is such a huge book, and it is such a huge movie. We had to chat about it. And I saw it in a packed theater last week.
Yes.
On opening day.
Mm-hmm.
I
saw it last night, which would have been Tuesday, in a packed theater in seat A1, where I had to crane my neck up because I was in the corner, and it was packed with very young women.
Very young women?
I would say women in their early 20s to late 20s. There was probably some 30-somethings there, but I saw gaggles of girls that are probably, I would say there's maybe teenagers in there too. Like, it was predominantly young women.
Yeah, I think my crowd was more of a, I was going in Park Slope. It was an older population, but it was also mostly women.
Mm-hmm.
There were two women sitting next to me. One of them, as the movie started, did say Team Ryle. So I would say RIP, and I hope that woman gets the help she needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to hand her a baby and have the conversation that Lily has with him at the end of the movie, which we will definitely get to.
My gosh. Yeah.
But before we get to that, one of the reasons we're doing this episode is because, as avid listeners of this podcast know, I also have another podcast with producer Patty. It's called the BO Boys, where we talk about box office. This movie had Boffa Bobo, as we say, big box office. But we got the band together, me and you, because we're promoting something. We're promoting our BO tour, which is me and Pat and Erin at every date as emotional support in the audience.
Yeah.
As emotional
you can come
support.
talk to me. I won't have anyone else to talk to, guys. So if you are a listener to the podcast, come find me.
Please interrupt the middle of the show to say how much of a fan you are of Erin, which we would love.
Please do.
Yeah. So we have shows in Los Angeles and New York City. Los Angeles is Tuesday, October 8th, and New York is Tuesday, October 22nd. For the Los Angeles show, you can get half-price tickets with the promo code BOXOFFICE, BOXOFFICE, all lowercase. And it's going to be a fun show. We've got some stuff that we've written. We got some videos. We have some guests. You'll get to see me. You'll get to see Erin in the audience. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So just putting that out there. But let's get to the real reason. That's a real mercenary reason to get together. We did honestly have to get together to talk about this wackadoo movie.
Well, we were going to talk about it and whether we recorded it or not. So instead of just in my living room, instead we're actually recording it for all of you. But before we get started, let's do like a real top level, real quick synopsis. We don't have to get into the nitty gritty. So Clayton,
thank you. I always the reason why you're doing this is because I always get into the nitty gritty, and it's gonna happen. Yeah. So it's just
you always start with it opens, and this person is feeling this, and let's say like who are the characters, where are people going?
You got to pull me out of the dirt sometimes here. Like I got to stay on the road. I sometimes veer off. Okay.
So like
main character
as the crow flies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Main character.
What is this about?
Okay. This movie is about Lily Blossom Bloom, who is a woman who has her parents have a history of abuse, right? Or like her dad was an abuser. She falls in love with a neurosurgeon. he turns out to be a scumbag. She had her first love, this guy Atlas, who we see in flashback. He ends up owning a big restaurant in Boston, called Root. She runs into him. There's a love triangle that happens. She gets pregnant, and
by her husband,
Ryle, who's the bad guy. Although all the men in this movie are bad, but we'll get to that. And then it ends with her reuniting with Atlas as a single mother. That's pretty good.
That was you did so good. I'm really proud of you.
Because we had to re-record a little bit, so the first time was terrible. I just want everybody to know. The first time was absolutely terrible.
The first time, 4 minutes in, I don't think we were done with the first act, so we needed to.
No. I was like setting the scene on the roof. I was like,
yeah.
They have lounge chairs? Why do they have lounge chairs? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, well, so Lily Blossom Bloom is a Mainer. I'm a famous New Hampshireite. I am poised to not like her from that, but also she doesn't act like a Maine. Nobody acts like they're actually from Maine in this, so it's fine. It's Hollywood's Maine.
Man, are they ever going to get that right? The Maine representation. It's
no,
probably
you can't commit those people to film. They're too psychotic.
Wow. Okay. So let's quickly, because we're going to get into the nitty-gritty.
Right.
What was your thoughts on this movie? Like, how did you feel after seeing it?
Okay. So if we're being real,
let's be real.
Expectations were in the basement. As far as like, I was like, if this is a competently made movie, I'll be shocked.
Like In Focus.
I just had no expectations. I did not think I was going to like it. I thought, and then after seeing the film, I was like, okay, well, that was a competently made, I think as it first ended, I was like, okay, I liked that. That was a lot better than I thought. As I've had time to think about it, I've liked it less. There are just a few glaring things with it, but I will say, as far as adaptations go, I think it's a good adaptation. But I think you're always with the source material, which I don't think was super strong in this case. So I thought it was fine. Producer Patty loved it. He is unfortunately unable to be a part of this recording, but
what? Special cameo by Pat. Pat.
Okay.
I summoned him like Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I do have to go in a minute, and I know my mic doesn't sound good because we're a one microphone household. Aaron has the microphone right now. That's how marriage works. Just had to pop in to say I love this movie. I had a blast. I know that's maybe not the best way, and you'll get into why of a great take on this is I had a blast.
Yeah, measure your words here, Pat. Yeah.
Jenny
it was
Slate,
a fun romp. I wouldn't say it's a fun romp.
I'm not going to say it was a roller coaster. It was a theme park attraction type movie. I'm not going to say that. Other people could say that. I thought Jenny Slate was super fun. So let's put all the fun in that basket. You'll get to her at some point. Maybe my expectations were so low that they were able to be just jumped so much higher. And that's what happened. But I did think this was a good movie, and now, that is where I'll put it, and leave it to the experts. You guys are the experts. Also, come see the BO Boys live Tuesday, October 8th in LA, Tuesday, October 22nd, New York City. You could bother Erin in the crowd; she'll love it. She's there for photo ops, autographs, all that. So.
And Pat, I know you have to go because you're a busy person.
Yeah.
I do want to say this to your face, though.
Yeah, say it to my face.
Yeah, that the fact that you think this was like a good movie is bonkers, and we'll get into that. I think it is exactly what you said. You were not even in the basement with your expectations. You were at the Earth's core, and you were able to crawl your way out of the magma to a point where you could get in your head that this movie is good.
Yes. No, my hand burst through the dirt like a zombie. Yeah.
This was like the end of Carrie.
Yeah.
is what happened to you with this movie.
But
so I just want to say that to your face.
Thank you for saying this to my face.
So I'm
Aaron,
not a snake.
anything that you want to say to my face? We're in 2 different rooms, but we are looking at each other over a streaming service right now. So anything you want to say to me, your husband, about me saying this is a good movie that I had fun at?
I don't know. We saw it together, so I feel like we talked about it on the way home. I don't feel like you have like I think that's what I think it is. I think the expectations were so low and it exceeded those low expectations. And so the curve that you're judging it on is higher, but I think it's
Okay. So my opinion is not valid. That is what both of you have said. I get it.
Yeah, of
That is the
course.
cross I have to bear as producer.
You're just
and
not
husband.
versed in the form of romance.
True.
I think that's one of the things too.
True.
Well, yeah. Nobody likes a sad sack. Poor Pat.
I'm gonna no. Thank you guys. I'm so happy to see this reunion. Obviously, I hang out with both of you all the time, and so it's not as much of a thrill for me as it is, I'm sure, for the audience who is just loving this right now and wanting me to go away.
So you conjured Pat. Can I get rid of Pat? I'll show you how to get rid of Pat. So, Lily, what do you think her sign is?
Oh, that's such a good question.
I wish
He's
that
gone.
we could show the video. He disappeared in a cloud of smoke.
Aquarius.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like where to start with this. Okay, where I do agree with Pat is Jenny Slate was a star. She's a star. Once she shows up in this movie, I do think we're cooking with gas. We're having fun. She has to exit the movie at a certain stage because we can't be giggling anymore. Things need to get a little bit more serious. But any scene that she's in, I'm having a good time.
She also really nails a very tough scene at the end where she does have to be serious and cry. And I think she really nails it. And it was almost an impossible monologue to get through, where I don't know if you remember this. You're a Gremlins fan. Did you watch the movie Gremlins?
Never, not once. No.
Okay. So there's this famous scene in Gremlins where Phoebe Cates has to do this speech about how her dad, the reason she doesn't like Christmas is because her dad dressed up like Santa Claus and tried to come down the chimney and he got stuck and he died in there. And it's not played for laughs. And she does this monologue, and it's like famously the worst part of that movie. And then they even parody it in Gremlins 2, where she has a reason why she doesn't like another thing, and it's like they parody this like actual real speech she was supposed to make in the first one that went off so badly. I think Jenny Slate has the same sort of backstory she has to explain, and she nails it in a way that I don't know anybody else could have done it. But let's start at the beginning here. So this movie starts with Lily going back to her parents' house for her dad's funeral. Her dad, we find out, is a total scumbum because he not only beats and assaults Lily's mom, but her first love, Atlas, when he catches her in bed with him, beats him nearly to death. And so, bad person. He dies. She's supposed to do the eulogy. She's trying to come up with 5 things that she loved about her dad, which she writes on a napkin or a Kleenex. And
she writes on a cocktail napkin just the numbers 1 through 5.
Yeah, and you also there was paper available somewhere. Right. I know we're supposed to take that into account that she's like, I didn't like my father. I'm having a hard time coming up with this. Maybe I went to a bar to write this out. But it's like, I would say for my funeral, maybe you come up with a cocktail napkin. That's fine, because I think that'd actually be very, very funny. But I think for your father, it's a different situation. So she's got this empty list. She can't do it. She walks off. She actually lives in Boston. She's going to open a flower shop. And I guess before that she meets Ryle on the roof of not her building.
just to talk about like her going home for the funeral, I was laughing during those scenes because I hadn't read the book. I didn't know about her dad. And it just seemed very weirdly melodramatic off the
Yes.
jump of like, I was like, and I felt like the mother was like, they weren't matching energies where
No.
like, it kept being very different. And I was like, she was so rude and dismissive to her mom.
Yeah.
I just did. And she dressed like the entire movie, she dresses like a psychopath. She dresses like an alien who has never had to dress before and just grabbed the first 4 things that she finds in any
Yeah.
situation. I don't understand it. So her outfit was distracting, and then just the way that she was at the funeral, I was laughing. I was
Mhm.
like, this is a little bit silly and ridiculous.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I'm no fashion plate, obviously, but I do agree that some of these outfits were a little bit odd.
yes. And I
So
think it's like, especially with costuming in film, it's like Jenny Slate's costumes were so tacky and over the top, but like that's her character.
that's her
So like we're
character.
learning more about her character based on like the ridiculous way that she's dressing. But I'm like, what are we supposed to be learning about Lily through these clothes? I couldn't put my finger, like I did not understand what the point of that was.
Well, her style icon might be Blossom from Blossom, who would always wear crazy outfits. You remember that show? Mayim
Yeah, but then her
Bialik?
personality, she wasn't like
Well,
a flash, like if she was somebody who was like flashy and always scatterbrained and always like not really paying attention to what she was wearing, so she would just throw anything on, then I'm like, okay, this her dressing this way is informing this character. But instead she was supposed to be somebody who was like very thoughtful and a little shy and very serious about her work,
yeah,
but
I
then
mean,
dressed like crazy.
now
It
this
didn't
is
make sense.
this is a question, and forgive me if this comes off clip. But what, like, I think that is a great question. What was her personality other than victim? Right? Because that is what her personality is in this movie. And I
Yeah.
hate to say that because I'm not it's this movie tackles serious subjects in a deeply unserious way. And
Yes.
so I think I don't want to be a bummer here because I know people are loving this movie and enjoying this movie, which is odd to me, but again, being a guy, because that's part of this whole thing, I don't I can't speak for women. I don't know how women think. I'm not going to chastise women for enjoying things that they like to enjoy, right? This just felt like misery porn for women. Like all the men in this movie are disgusting in different ways. Like you have modeled here every single terrible thing about masculinity, right?
Mhm.
Ryle, who's a neurosurgeon. And believe me, if I needed my brain cut open, I would want that person to exist. But otherwise, lock them in a box. If you are a neurosurgeon, you should be locked in a box because you are a psychopath, okay, in real life, because you think you're a god, right? You think you are the line between life and death, but you don't have to act like it every single fucking day of your life. The fact that
Yeah.
this guy, and I know he's an actor, was so chiseled and cut to a insane level that elite athletes don't even have to be in as good a shape as this guy was. That is pathological. That is a pathological person. You have him. Then you have Hassan Minaj, who is Jenny Slate's husband, who is the crypto tech dweeb that is just gross and thinks we
Mhm.
want to talk about his angel funding or whatever the fuck, right? So he's a piece of shit. And then you have, not the worst, but pretty close, you have the douchey chef bro. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, Atlas, the douchey chef who thinks that his food is so important. And listen, food is great. Food brings people together. I work on a food podcast. It is very important to me. But the seriousness and the sleaziness of this guy is overpowering. There is not, and then the dad. I mean, the dad is just a straight up abuser. We see nothing else other than that. There's no man in this movie that isn't disgusting. So I don't see, as a romance, where your priorities should lie, because for me, it didn't lie with Atlas. And I know it was supposed to, but it certainly didn't. So for me as a romance lover, there was no guy that I was like, they deserve a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was a rant, but how do you feel about the men in this movie?
Well, I agree. I think Ryle, like, he's a disgusting person, but I do think that, like, I know that character, like, I've met that person, not necessarily who's a physical abuser, but,
Yeah.
you know, I think that, like you said, it's like neurosurgeons, doctors, surgeons tend to be strange and controlling. So it's not, I mean, to be horrifically general, obviously there are surgeons
Yeah,
who aren't, but, like, you know, the stereotype there. In the book, he's 26 years old and a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
Which is fantastic because
So
there's
he's
not
Doogie
enough hours
Howser.
there's no way that would be possible. So that's why everyone is also aged up. In the book, everybody is in their early 20s, which I
Okay.
think makes it even more strange. So I think Ryle being a bad guy, he's supposed to be a bad guy. Atlas, I agree. And I think the thing that the movie doesn't talk about is, like, they're each other's, like, first great love. The fact that he's homeless is such a weird KU, Kindle Unlimited
Yeah.
romance
Yes.
trope of, like, somebody being homeless as a child and that's how they meet. And it's weird how often that has happened. But then it's like they live in the city, and, like, Boston is not a big city. Like,
Yeah.
if you wanted to find, like, this takes place in modern day. It's like you could look her up on Facebook. You guys went to high school together. Like, you could find out where she is. So it's
Oh,
also
yeah.
very strange that he's, like, you know, naming, like, she's getting tattoos of the heart that he carved for her, and he's naming the restaurant after her. And it's like, guys, did you ever think to, like, give each other a goog? Because I think that's all it would take. And then, you know,
Follow
you
each
would
other.
find each
Yeah.
other again. And there's no kind of explanation of why that's impossible.
Other than,
So
I mean, in the book, maybe, and I'm just making this up, is that the father was like, never see this guy again, and she didn't see him again until after he died. I mean, is that a possibility? Like, now that her dad is dead, she felt like safe to bring Atlas around, because the dad did beat
but she
Atlas
didn't. She
almost to
happened
death.
into his restaurant. Like, she
That's
didn't
true.
know
You're
he
right.
was there.
You're right. You're
She
right.
didn't seek him out at all.
No.
I guess that makes sense if the character is still 23, like she is in the book, because you're still, like, kind of a kid. But,
Yeah.
like, if you're in your early 30s and you're like, my dad told me not to see somebody, and so I'm not seeing them, it's like, okay, that's weird.
That's weird. Yeah.
But I agree, when Ryle confronts Atlas in the restaurant, and then Atlas immediately starts throwing hands, it's like,
Yeah.
that's also toxic masculinity.
Yes.
That's also disgusting.
Yeah.
That's also bad. And it's so weird to be like, it's bad that Ryle is violent towards Lily, which, yes, obviously that's an issue. But it's also bad that Atlas's form of conflict resolution is also violence. In that way, I'm like, okay, well, Lily shouldn't be with this guy either because he's violent. And not that he's, like, violent for the right reasons. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So okay. So what happens with Ryle is that he's making a frittata. It starts to burn because he's making out with Lily. He grabs it, burns his hands. She goes over to help. He flails his arms and hits her in the face and gives her a black eye. Right. And so that can be construed as an accident, you know, in some contexts. Right.
Or what I will say that I do think that the film did well was when we first see the instances of domestic violence, they are shown like that, where you're like, oh, well, was that an accident? Did he just flail his arm accidentally? It happens so fast. It's confusing. You don't see what happened. Later in the film, she thinks back and he hits her. He throws her down the stairs. There's no ambiguity.
Yes.
And I thought that was a very good and accurate portrayal of how it feels in those instances where you're confused, you don't know, you don't want to know really what happened, and then you look back and with a little bit of clarity. So in that way, I think that was good. But I just don't want there's only ambiguity in the first time we're shown that scene.
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
honestly, I was going to say that was
Oh,
the
sorry.
one thing. No. You had the same exact thought I had, where I thought that was the one thing this movie did well, is
Yes,
that
for sure.
that is how a lot of times it starts and it escalates before
Mhm.
you are able to admit or remember exactly what, because you love this person and you don't want to believe that they would do that to you. And a lot of this movie could have easily, because a lot of the rest of it was very ham-fisted, could have been like, he immediately hits her and we know that
Right.
he hits her and she stays with him, right? But so after that happens and the ambiguity of it to us, we see them go to Root, which is Atlas's restaurant. And he sees the mark under her eye and confronts her in the bathroom. It confronts her in the bathroom, is like, leave him. And then Ryle comes into the bathroom and pulls him out. They get into a fight, exactly like Atlas goes alpha bro and starts punching Ryle, which is not the thing you want to do, and is, like you said, not the alternative to this guy, right? You'd want a guy who'd be like, if you ever touch her, I'm gonna do something, you know what I mean? And then he gets punched by Ryle and he doesn't do anything, right? And he's like, get out of my restaurant. That would be an alternative, because then you see somebody who is better than this guy, but he goes completely ape shit immediately, going down to Ryle's level, which is not what you
Mhm.
want. The other thing about, other than Hassan Minaj, who is like played for laughs, but is like oily and gross, the way these men confront and speak to these to Lily,
Yeah.
they're like stoic and mysterious and dangerous, to almost a periodic level, where they will just make a pronouncement like, leave him, not be like, let's have a talk about this, like, why are you with this guy, you have a history of abuse. And listen, I'm a chatty guy, so maybe that's the difference. I would sit down and talk to Lily for like 2 hours about her situation, but Atlas is just like, leave him, leave him. And it's like, you're monosyllabic. You're a fucking caveman, which I guess is a fantasy to a lot of people, is the caveman, which
Right.
is
And I
what
think
both of these guys seem to be.
and I think that the other issue is like you said before with like Lily's wardrobe, like Lily doesn't have a personality or a
No.
point of view. So much of this movie is taken up by Ryle trying to get Lily to date him, which is just so, it takes so much time and it makes the second half of the film end up being so rushed and all
Yeah.
that time getting so compressed. And I'm also the whole time I'm like, why wouldn't you date him? Like, I get he's a fuck boy, and so we're supposed to be, but like, she's like, no, I only date seriously. But it's like, why? Like, why doesn't she just fuck around with a hot guy? Like, that's fine, obviously, whatever you want to do. But then I need to know a little bit about your character. Like, were you burned in the past? Are you trying to track down Atlas because you're in love with him?
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to save yourself for him? Like, whatever the reason is fine. But we just got so many scenes that were the same scene, which is him being like, I like you, let's date. Her being like, no, you're just gonna fuck around on me. And
Mm-hmm.
then that continuing to the point where I'm like, we as the audience know they're ending up married. So
Mm-hmm.
why are we having 12 scenes of her trying to push him away? It doesn't make sense. It makes the movie so slow for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then for her to go from that to him proposing to her in a hospital room randomly and them eloping. It's like, okay, so did they have a whirlwind romance, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine, or she didn't want to date him, didn't want to get serious for so long? Like, there was so much pacing and inconsistency with like her story, her wants, that she does, it's like a total self-insert character where there's no there's no personality. We don't get to see her backstory. Like, she's very shy, I guess, in that, like, even when Jenny Slate's character comes in and is very chatty, she's kind of like very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends up being like, okay, well, everyone's just in love with this woman because she's beautiful. And she's Blake Lively. She's gorgeous. Obviously. She dresses like a crazy person, and that doesn't defer anybody.
I'm more
So,
of a
like,
Kristen Stewart guy, but still.
You are.
Yeah,
But empirically, Blake Lively is a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Like, please. So
just like you would say, just like you know, Riles, the guy who plays Riles, is a good-looking guy with a gigantic head, probably the biggest head I've ever seen on a human being on screen. And you can sort of see, I mean, I understand why women would go crazy for him, but the more I looked at him, the more he looked like, God, what's that guy? Mind Freak. He
Chris Angel.
looked like Chris Angel. The more I looked at him, I was
Chris
like,
Angel.
this Chris Angel looking MFer with the biggest head I've ever seen, is like almost became like hard to look at. And I think that is like, once you see somebody as an abuser, they do become unattractive. You
He
know,
plays like a greasy, disgusting person
from
too
the
well.
jump.
Like,
Yeah,
really well. Like, I think
exactly.
like when he shows up and like, this is on purpose. When he shows up and kicks the chair, it's like, this guy's a scumbag.
Yeah.
Immediately you're like, okay, this guy's an asshole and a piece of shit. Which you should. And I like the rooftop scene where Lily and Ryle meet for the first time. Like, she's giggly and falling all over herself. Like, she clearly is into him from that moment because nothing he's saying is funny.
Yeah.
And I think we didn't need all that other stuff.
Well,
but
yeah.
I think he's smarmy and gross immediately, but like, I do think like some women are attracted to that kind of like smarmy, gross kind of guy. So like, it's fine.
Well,
it is. I was not confused about that.
No. And on the roof, immediately when, again, kicks a chair, big red flag. But then when she's sitting on the ledge and he's like, come down from there. You're making me nervous. I was like, what the fuck? What propriety do you have over this person immediately that she's making you nervous, or she's some idiot that is going to fall off the side of a building? Like, she's never sat somewhere before. Like, that immediately made me be like, this guy is an asshole.
But I thought that was good though, because then you're showing like, oh, does he care about her? He wants her to be safe. But like,
but
no,
that's not what it
clearly
was. He
he's
wants
trying
control.
No, he wanted control immediately. He
Yeah.
wanted to see if she would do what he said immediately.
Yeah.
Which is like very abuser like. And
yeah.
So in that way, I'm like, yeah, we're doing a good job of telegraphing that this character's a piece of shit.
And we're showing that she's susceptible to that sort of relationship, that she will take that into account instead of being like, hey, dude, I know this isn't my building, but I'll sit wherever the fuck I want to sit, you big-headed freak. Like, so I think that was, I mean, again, I think maybe I'm falling into the trap of like, this movie's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and I'm like chastising it for it, because believe me, I mean, I should be talking about people being like drawn to bad people because listen, right? I mean, it happens, and so I think it's just,
and that's what the movie is about.
Yeah,
like, that is
frustrating to see it. I mean, I just read a book called Acts of Desperation, which is by Meg Nolan, I believe is her name, or something like that. If I'm getting that wrong, whatever. But it's a book about a woman who falls for a shitheel. And the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, why are you doing this? And it's like, I know why she's doing it. Like, but when you're not in it, it's very easy to look at somebody else and be like, that's a bad person. That's a bad person. But you can't help it when you're the person who's in the relationship. So this movie does a very good job of that. But I do think the main criticism that we both have that is valid is that she is not a person in this movie. She's not well drawn. So we just don't know why she's drawn to these men other than her history of abuse. And for people, that might be enough, but I want to understand why she's fun to hang out with. And to your point earlier, we see so much of him doing his smarmy, trying to court her. And then they do a montage of them actually falling in love and getting married. So we don't see him do cute things. We don't see her do cute things. We don't see the actual people falling in love, which is the thing in romance novels that I love, which is like, how is this person unique and this person unique, and them meeting and putting those things together to create something that's fun and sexy and like, romantic. You get none of
Right, like,
this.
we don't see the love bombing that he
Yeah.
would do to her, that then would make it difficult for her to leave. That, like you said, it's all done in a montage. And similarly with Atlas, because it's like, it's flashbacks to them as teenagers, and it's like, they have this apparent and the way that, like, I guess teenagers do feel everything so extremely,
Yeah.
but it's like, she gives him clothes and food and lets him shower at her house, and then they watch, like, Ellen together.
Mhm.
I didn't get why this was, like, a deep, everlasting love, but also, like, I guess you are a teenager, but it's the same thing where it's like, she didn't have a personality. It's not like they had, like, inside jokes, or he really saw her in a way no one else did. It just seemed
Yeah.
like he was there, which, sometimes is enough when you're 17. But
I mean,
I
he had,
yeah.
his personality was homeless. Unhoused.
His
I'm
yeah.
sorry, unhoused.
His personality was a homeless kid, and that his parents also his mother was also in an abusive relationship. I
Mhm.
will say, so for as much as everybody is talking about how this is, it's about domestic violence, obviously, I did think, other than that portion of the domestic violence that I do think was handled well, I was shocked by how poorly it was handled post that, to a degree where I was like, oh, this is, this could be really damaging,
Mhm.
because over the years, I've had friends who have been in, like, intimate partner violence situations, and they've had to escape those situations, and some did and some weren't able to. So I understand it's very difficult, but they never showed the difficulty of that,
Mhm.
because basically she just decides to leave, and then she leaves, and she just stays at Atlas's place for, like, a day or two. And something that anybody with even a passing knowledge of the intricacies of domestic violence will know is that, like, the highest danger of losing your life is when you leave. And the
Mm.
way and how you leave is really important to be very thoughtful and specific, because especially this character that we've set up Ryle to be, which is somebody who's, like, very controlling and um impulsive and violent and into appearances and all of these things, like, I was thinking, I was like, okay, wow, so she's gonna have to somehow, like, go underground, like, not be at her flower shop. She's gonna have
Yeah.
to get money somehow, because, like, there's no talk about the way in which there's financial manipulation as well. A lot most and every time that I've never been in this situation myself, thankfully, but, like, had friends who have been in these situations, like, there's a lot of financial manipulation as well. And it seemed like all she did was just go to him and be like, I want a divorce. And then he's like, okay. And then helps her build a thing. And I'm like, okay, well, this is dangerous, because this is not how you do it.
Yeah.
And also, he bites her tattoo once he figures she has a tattoo on her collarbone that is for Atlas.
It
And
was the heart
Ryle,
that he carved out of
yeah,
wood to symbolize their strength.
right. It
Yeah.
is a cute tattoo. I did think it was a very cute tattoo.
It's a cute
But
tattoo.
Ryle bites it, and then she's in the hospital, and I'm like, okay, well, this is really dangerous, because it's going to be going into her hospital records, which Ryle's going to have access to because he works in a hospital. So it's like, okay, so she's going to have to go in under an alias. Also, the nurses, the hospital, they're all mandated reporters. So they're going to see that she has this bite mark. They're going to have to call the police. The police are going to go to, like, this is going to really fuck him up and make him seem like he's a bad guy. He's going to retaliate.
Yeah,
Nothing happens
I know.
at all. And it's just like, what? Okay. Like, it just seemed like, honestly, it seemed like a very juvenile, the whole movie seemed like a 14-year-old's idea of what a domestic violence situation would be and how you got out of it.
Yeah.
And it just seemed so misrepresentative and juvenile. And I that was really disappointing to me too.
And I think again, since we're romance fans, we read romance. Fantasy is great. And you shouldn't have to be tied to the laws of the real world when you are writing about love. But when you're writing about domestic violence in the way you've explained it, you have an obligation to not have a fantastical way to get out of it. Because if you're going to write stuff like that, you have to write it thoroughly. And like you said, understand that like if you want to have it where this person gets out, you do just have to be more realistic as to how it goes, right? Because that can be the aspiration of like, you can get out of this situation. It'll be tough, but you can do it. You can't make it just a hand wipe, because you're so right. So she leaves and goes directly to the guy that he said, don't ever talk to ever again. Right. So in real life, this entitled neurosurgeon goes over there and kills both of them. Like that would happen. Right. And so that's the sort of thing, is like, she goes to his worst, in his mind, his worst enemy and biggest competition. So that's crazy. Then again, her flower shop, right? I mean, in this movie, she's a multi-million-dollar flower shop owner because that's just what it is. So we're to assume that she can support herself and her, baby on a flower owner's salary, a flower shop owner's salary. So whatever.
Sure.
We can do that. That's the fantasy, and that's fine. Everybody's rich in this movie except for the you're either rich or you're homeless. So that's or unhoused. Those are the two things.
I mean, that's modern America, I guess.
But here's the other thing that you were saying that is even crazier than how you described it. The way she asked for a divorce, after letting him back in and building the crib, and she's by herself and she's pregnant and she knows this guy's an abuser, and she lets him back in to help build the crib. After that, he's in the room with her while she's giving birth, holding her hand. Okay. He then is there with the baby afterwards. She names him, the baby, Emerson or Emmy. After, and this is what Jenny Slate explained, because she's the sister of Ryle, when they were kids, they had an older brother. And Ryle and him were playing with a gun that they found. Ryle shot his brother and killed him, Emerson. And it stuck with him forever, as it would, right? And the fact that Jenny Slate could get this out of her mouth and cry and really sold this to me. Otherwise, I probably, and I know this is not a funny subject, but the way it's just thrown at you is sort of ridiculous. So I could see people giggling at this if they weren't fully engaged in this movie, which the people in the audience were. But so, okay, she has the baby. She's like, do you want to hold your daughter? And which she named after his dead brother, and they're going to call her Emmy. So he's holding the baby, and she takes this moment to tell this violent man she wants a divorce while he's holding this baby and just hoping that this guy is not going to be a maniac and react badly to somebody who seems to be letting him back in. And all intents and purposes, the things that she's done have been, I want you back in my life. But he's holding the baby, and she's like, I want a divorce. What would you say if she came to you and said, my husband did this, my boyfriend did this, blah, blah, blah. This is such a risky gambit to think that this narcissistic psychopath is going to be able to make that leap and care about a newborn baby, which men always have a hard time bonding with babies immediately until they start looking like them, right? So this baby's head was not as large that he would be like, this is definitely my baby.
I don't know about that. I think it's different people, different bonding. But yeah.
But this was so crazy to me that she risked this baby's safety to do this. And again, it's a
Right.
movie, so I understand, but like I'm invested at this point in this baby's well-being more than anything else, because these two like idiots made this baby, and now this baby has to suffer. So she says this, and he's like, I would say run as far as I can, you know, and then he just leaves and gives the baby back. And then we have the greatest thing ever in a movie where the one of the actors says the name of the movie, because she says, it ends with us. And I laughed. And I was the
I
only
did too.
person laughing. And I felt bad because I was a middle-aged man in a babe hat laughing amongst all these 25-year-old women who are there with their friends.
And
And
we're sobbing. In my theater, they were audible
yes, there was
sobs.
so many sniffles. And I, as much as I make fun of that, I do think like, oh, okay, so now I understand what the title of this book means, is that we are not going to perpetuate this cycle, which is great and is such a fulfilling fantasy for people. But then she finds her way back to Atlas. And I'm like, it didn't end with them. Like, you're bringing this fucking chef bro who immediately chooses violence. So maybe he won't hit you or the daughter, but who knows who this guy's going to hit if he gets rear-ended in his car or something, right? So like, you chose violence again. So the cycle's not over. Like it wouldn't have been a romance if she would have just left with the baby and just had the baby and hung out with herself and maybe found a nice guy on Hinge. That is not a romantic ending for me. It's just not.
Yeah. Well, and also I think it's overly simplistic to just be like, and I think does such a disservice to so many people who are in these situations where it's like, yeah, there's deciding that you don't want it to continue, but then there's a lot of work that goes into making sure the cycle doesn't continue.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple as like, well, I told him to leave and then he left. This ego maniac psycho just left. And it's like, no. And I just decided it and therefore it is.
Yeah.
It's just like, fuck you.
I know.
That you think that that's all it is. And so all these people who are stuck in these cycles of abuse, it's like they just didn't want it bad enough.
Yes.
They just didn't want to not be abused anymore. And so they kept getting abused and they didn't know what else to do. They were weak. And it's like, fuck you. Like, I'm sorry. That was so upsetting and so bizarre after she faced absolutely, and not that, like, listen, I don't want her to face consequences. And I would love it if everybody in an intimate partner violence situation was able to simply say to that person, stop, go away, and that person would leave.
Yeah.
Please, that would be wonderful and the world would be a better place. It's not true. It doesn't happen. It's not accurate. And it does such a disservice if you're trying to be this, like, talking about this important topic of domestic violence, but not in any way representing it well. Because also everyone around her is like, I believe you that he did this to you and I support you. Which again, if every victim was able to have everyone in their life believe and support them, the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
It isn't. So the idea that Alyssa, the sister, would simply just be like, I believe you and you should never go back to him. Yeah, that's great. That's a fantasy.
That's a fantasy.
You know? And never mind that she has no other friends. She's lived in Boston for a decade, but apparently has not met a single other soul.
Well, she's boring as shit. So and she dresses funny.
She's so dull. She's so dull, and people probably think that she's like, you know, in the middle of a mental health crisis herself. So they're not engaging. But it's like, fine. Okay. I think that it just does such an extreme disservice to try to pretend as though this is an accurate or good representation of what it takes to leave a situation, what it takes to break generational cycles of abuse is a fantasy. You're right. This is a pure fantasy. And it's so it's hard to like the movie when the pacing is off. It's weirdly slow. You speed through the parts that are important and you want to learn more about. And also that would show the strength of character that Lily has, that would show how difficult it is to overcome, that would show how difficult it is to break these cycles of violence. We don't see that. It seems incredibly simple for her.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like she goes back and forth on it. It doesn't seem like he's able to convince her 1 or 2 times to stay. Like they don't talk about the violence afterwards either. So, or that I remember. But anyway, so that's why I have a hard time liking this movie and why I think it's like almost irresponsible.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had the, like being there by myself. I think I was able to analyze the movie a little bit in a way that I wouldn't if I was like in a group or in a group of like Colleen Hoover fans or whatever. It's like, and also just the analysis that we've done on romance novels in the past, like just giving me more of like, I see this trope, I see this trope, I see this trope. And it's very tropey, obviously. There's so many tropes in here. One of the tropes that I think works better sort of in a book form than in this movie was the fact that Atlas was a guy who basically lived this monastic lifestyle after him and Lily broke up, which makes more sense if they're 23 or 26 and not like a 37-year-old guy who has never had anybody else in his life and lies about having a girlfriend. That is sort of like in real life when you see that character, it's a little bit more pathetic than in a novel form. And also in modern day, it's where, like if this was something like, if this was historical and then you would be like, oh, this guy is great. You know what I mean? Like, because there's just feels more like, oh, I'm just abstaining, where here it's like, this guy never had a girlfriend at all. Like that.
And he is very attractive.
Yeah, and he is that makes him like stunted in a way that you probably wouldn't want to end up with him. Like he would have to do a lot of work to be able to function as a romantic person because he hasn't done it since he was in high school.
And only that first time. But wait, we know that? Because when she says, oh, there was no Cassie, I assume that he just lied about like him being in a relationship in that moment. And not necessarily that he had never been with anybody else.
He talks about this. I mean, when he's interviewed for the best places in Boston and Root gets number 1, he talks about her. Like, in my estimation, and listen, the book might be different and he might have been a total fuckboy at some point and then decided, I just want to do the chef thing. But in the context of this, he never got over her to such an extent that she seemed to have like at least moved on a little bit and had some sort of life. He feels like his life is connected directly so much to her that he named his restaurant after something that, a conversation he had with her in high school. Now, your high school love can be big, and it can be really important. And I know it's a romance, so we're blowing this all up. But from the context of like how he reacted, it felt like she was the only one ever. And even if he did have like flings and stuff, he never had a connection to anybody else in the way that she had a connection to Ryle, at least physically, or was worn down so much by his like just aggressive sort of courting that she acquiesced to him.
Right.
Yeah. So it might not be canon
and
that
he's montage like was
yeah, it might not be canon that he has only had sex with one woman, but it seems like it.
Right.
And that's bad enough. I mean, did I enjoy the experience of this movie? Like, sort of, because it's a movie and it's just fun to be at a movie. But I did, there were things like, I just, like I said, I just like I could not get behind any of the guys in this movie. And I couldn't get behind her because she is bland. And the only person I wanted to have a good life was Jenny Slate, who is like a rich, entitled princess, which is so crazy that that's the person that I rooted for, which I also think is just rooting for Jenny Slate to be in more movies more than anything.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Obvious Child, like Jenny Slate is a great actress.
She's
And I
awesome.
do love her. Yeah, she's so great.
And so, yeah, so I just am so I understand why this movie is big because the book is big. It is a little bit, again, just like worrisome that young women are like watching this movie and like, listen, maybe they are so in touch that they realize like everything that you've said and I've said, they're like, yeah, of course we know, we don't care. Or we know and we don't go to this movie for that, so it's fine with us. It's just, I think, like you said, if like a 18-year-old or a 19-year-old watches this and is like romanticizing this like sort of life, it's sad and really scary that would be what this is. And I mean, this is akin to being like guns in movies create violence in real life, but I don't know. There's just something really intimate and personal about
Yeah.
this sort of situation, and it's so prevalent.
And I think when people talk about it as far as and it's like Colleen Hoover books, like, listen, bless her. She wrote these books. By all accounts, she seems like she's a lovely person. That's all I've ever heard. So I don't want to like knock her too bad, but it's like her books are what they are. And I
Mhm.
think people reading them understand what they are and understand they're not like instruction manuals. But I think that like when we're getting into this kind of wider release of films and stuff, and there's a like a level of responsibility there, you
Yeah,
know.
I hate to say this as somebody who has a movie podcast, but or a box office podcast. General film audiences are different sorts of people than avid readers, right?
Well, there's a buy it like there's going to see a film for 2 hours and there's like buying and reading a book, which
Yeah,
takes longer. So it's like there's just a lower barrier to entry for a
yeah,
film.
but I mean, and like not, but I think somebody who reads more is able to understand like nuance a little bit better only because that's what reading is as compared to being passive and watching things. Like, of course, that's a
Mhm,
blanket statement, but I think like that's why things work better in books than sometimes films, right? Just because
mhm,
you really have to like blast someone in the face with something in a movie where in a book you can have something happen and it adds to the texture of the rest of the book, but it doesn't throw it in your face, right? And I think
mhm,
that's why like the book is a different experience than the movie. And the movie has to be extra responsible because it is like it is so much more in your face and less nuanced.
mhm.
That's at least
Yeah.
my very pretentious thought process. So, who knows? Yeah. So do we want to go over tropes in this movie, like what the tropes were?
Oh, well, if you have a list, let's hear it.
I don't have a list. I just thought I'd throw it out
Okay.
there because I mean,
I mean, homeless kid is a
a
trope, I
homeless kid
guess.
is a trope. I mean, I've loved you, I've loved you forever is a trope, obviously Atlas.
Mhm.
Childhood romance is definitely a trope. The
Second chance romance.
second chance romance. I mean, this Ryle is like a um what would you call him? Would you call him a rake or a rogue? Or I mean, those are all sort of positive. He's like a scumbag, I guess.
Yeah.
Um Rich people is a trope. Everybody's rich in this movie again, like I said, except for the unhoused child, who now is rich from his restaurant, his number one restaurant in Boston.
Right, which
Um
we all know, like, restaurants, especially first-time restaurants, so lucrative.
oh, he's just rolling in it, obviously. But yeah,
But it's also fun. I don't know, I like beautiful apartments and stuff, so I'm like,
oh,
"It's fine."
yeah,
I'm like, "Who
oh,
cares?"
they look a lot better on film than hovels for sure. Um,
Yeah.
it's, um, I know this is like real life people, so we can't do would we fuck them, right?
No, I know. I mean, as characters, also no. None of them.
Jenny Slate's character
Oh, would we get martinis with them? Yes.
with Jenny Slate,
Alyssa.
yeah, but
Oh, yeah.
keep your man at home. I don't,
Oh, no,
yeah.
he's the most disgusting of the disgusting. A crypto bro VC capitalist, you're a
Dweeb,
disgusting. Yeah, jump off a roof.
thank you. Yeah, okay. Wow, so 2 thumbs way up, is what we're saying.
A great experience. I mean, for all that, I will say it was a competently made film.
Well, yes, okay. Let's get to that really quickly.
It looked good.
Looked
It looked
good.
like a movie.
Anybody saying that this looks like a Lifetime movie is lying. They just have not
No.
watched Lifetime movies, because Lifetime movies look terrible. It has the melodrama of a Lifetime movie for sure, but
Right.
the upgrade in Blake Lively, who's actually like a star, is big. Because I mean, this is her.
I mean, I would not she's a beautiful woman. I do not think that she has the charisma
Well,
that they were acting like Lily Bloom has in this movie.
no, I mean, but I mean in the sense of the fact that she is a name that could open a picture. In this
Oh, totally.
genre,
Yeah,
she is a
definitely.
star. Yeah. I do also I understand, like you said, if, if we're talking about what the standard of beauty is, then she is reaching the standard of beauty at a high level. Again, not for me, like not my type in any
Okay.
sort of way.
She'll be
So,
crushed, but yes.
yeah, well, again, and here I am, a man judging a woman's appearance, but like in the sense of like that, like as a romantic lead for me, I would be like, okay, I'm not, but I'm the same with the guys. Like, I didn't find either of those guys, like, I understood why they would be good looking to people, but just their personalities in the film turned me off from them. Every
Oh,
single
yeah.
one. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess young Atlas is whatever. I mean, he's like an
Oh, I thought adult Alice, I thought he was hot. He's in that 1923, the spinoff of Yellowstone,
he is.
which is also a romance and ended on a cliffhanger, so I hope it comes back. But yeah,
Oh,
I thought he was very attractive.
yeah.
But even in, like, for Ryle, as much as he's like a slimy scumbag, gross, I get it.
Yeah, you get it. I
I don't
mean,
know.
Chris Angel gets a lot of women.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. It's mostly with his mind freak powers though. So, who knows. But yeah, Aaron, wow. What an episode. Got heavier than I expected, but I think it's a heavier movie than people are really talking about.
Yeah, that's the other thing is so much of the advertising for it, I think, is really hiding what it is about as well, which I think is an odd choice.
Mhm. Well, all right, Aaron. So, do you have anything you want to plug?
No. I don't stay subscribed to this feed, guys, because every once in a while we'll be dropping stuff in it. So there's no harm in sticking around. We could always come back. I put the podcast on a pause for a little while just because I have other things happening that I wanted to focus on, but doesn't mean it's done forever. So
Yeah.
stick around. I'll chat with you more about it at the live shows because again,
Yes.
I'll be in the audience by myself. So I'm down to have a chat if anybody wants to, if anyone loves the box office and romance novels and wants to come to the BO Boys live, please do.
Yes, in Los Angeles, Tuesday, October 8th. Aaron will be there in the audience. And then New York City hometown show, Tuesday, October 22nd. We'll have the, you know, uh, in the show notes, you'll be able to click and buy tickets. Also, I mean, I'll do plug for BO Boys. Subscribe to the BO Boys if you're not already subscribed. We're also on YouTube. We are YouTubers, so check us out on there. I hate being on camera, so I am sort of incognito there. So I've come up with ways to cover my appearance. So you'll see me in shades and a neckerchief for some reason, which I've started to adopt as like a style on YouTube. Hopefully it'll catch on. Also
Mm.
listen to This Is Taste, a
Yeah.
podcast that I help produce and I edit. It's a awesome podcast that comes out 3 times a week. Check that out. Check out the Baldwin 100. It's James Baldwin's 100th birthday. I share a birthday with James Baldwin, August 2nd. Can you believe that?
No
Um,
way. Oh, that's
one
really
one
cool.
great man and a buffoon with a mic sharing a birthday. That is the rich tapestry of life. And then Criminal Types coming back for a second season soon. Also, a great podcast about crime novels. So
Mm.
plenty of stuff to listen to. So please check all of those out. At the very least, subscribe and download them without listening if you don't have the time. But it would be helpful to also listen because they're fun.
Yeah.
All right, Erin, how do we end this thing?
Happy reading. Happy watching.
Happy both.
Happy both.